What if I told you that this nerdy Brazilian dude just went to war at the top of the middleweight division and proved to the world that he has what it takes to compete for UFC gold? Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Don with Palace Sports, and today I'm going to be following up on my first MMA Dark Horses video, talking about a rising middleweight contender, Caio Borralho. After his statement-making performance against Jared Cannonier at the most recent UFC fight night, I took it upon myself to rewatch this dude's fights, and he's an absolute savage. And I think he has the tools to one day be the next middleweight champion of the world. So with all that out the way, let's get right into the video and breaking down his skill set. Caio Borralho, also known as the Natural, is a middleweight with a 17-1-0 professional record. He fights out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, but more importantly, on the Fighting Nerds team. And they're collectively doing a little takeover of the UFC right now, but I'll get to that point at a later part of this video. He's a clean 7-0 in the UFC. He has yet to lose a fight since coming off the Dana White Contender Series. In his fight against Jared Cannonier, he went the full 25 minutes and he almost knocked him out with this really clean jab 1-2 straight down the pipe. I seriously don't know how Jared Cannonier survived it. It was brutal. A big part of what makes Caio Borralho so good is his movement. He fights with a really wide, bladed, almost karate-style stance that may leave his front leg really open to the takedown, but since he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he's not really worried about that. And this lets him dart in and out of the boxing range to really control the pace of the fight. He has a very fast and thudding jab that he likes to use to pressure his opponents early on in his fights, before then incorporating his accurate boxing combinations and low kicks. He sometimes likes to bust out these stationary flying knees when his opponents have their hands down, and even if they don't always connect, with a guy like Caio Borralho, these strikes serve to manipulate his opponent's defense in a certain way, so he can then pick at them further where their guards are lacking. A natural orthodox fighter, he added a southpaw stance to his game just to elevate it further, and he does a good job of mixing up his offense regardless of what stance he's in, just to further keep his opponents on their toes. The icing on the cake of an already elite skill set is his ability to game plan and study his opponents before each and every fight. And we've heard this narrative before with fighters getting super in the weeds and in the nitty gritty, but I think it's different with Caio Borralho. He just focuses on a simple and effective game plan that he knows will lead him to victory. After beating Jared Cannonier, he sits comfortably at number 5 on the middleweight rankings. And he currently doesn't have a fight booked, so let's do a little matchmaking and see what his path to the title could look like. So who's next for the Natural? What's most likely to me is a high-profile fight that will generate headlines no matter who wins. Engaging off of both of these guys' recent performances, I think this just makes sense, and that would be Israel Adesanya. I know Izzy's coming off of a really hard loss to Dricus and an even harder loss to Sean Strickland, and casual fans may just write off Izzy and give Caio Borralho the easy win. But we gotta remember how Izzy got to that point in the first place. He's been fighting the elite of the division since 2018, and this would definitely be a huge step up for Caio and the hardest fight of his career thus far. With his wide bladed stance, Caio Borralho loves to fight on the outside, and so does Izzy. He has all kinds of kicks in his arsenal that he could use against Caio Borralho that could make things difficult. But we also got to remember, in the Strickland fight, Izzy really struggled against that jab. And I think just on an athletic level, Caio Borralho is way faster than Sean Strickland, and I could see that giving Izzy a lot of problems should they fight. If the UFC doesn't want to move in that direction, they could also match him up against Nassourdine Imavov, another rising contender in the middleweight division. Nicknamed the Sniper, Imavov is also pretty slick on the feet. He's got a really quick jab too, and it would be really fun to see which one of these two guys would win the jab war should they fight. And he also is pretty strong in the clinch. In his fight against Roman Dolidze, he hit a huge knee to the dome that almost just ended the fight outright. We gotta remember though, Imavov also fought Cannonier recently, and Imavov was handed his win on a silver platter through a controversial stoppage by the ref, whereas Caio Borralho had to earn his win through a 5-round dogfight. And I'm not trying to preach MMA math here, but in general, I think that Caio Borralho's aggression, speed, and game planning ability really sets him apart from a guy like Imavov. Should the Natural win his next fight, the UFC will probably give him a title shot. And that means he'll have to face an absolute wrecking ball, a marauder, still knocks himself, Dricus du Plessis. If you saw the TikTok I made before UFC 305, then you know how I feel about Dricus du Plessis. And if not, then you totally should. The link's in the description. But the TLDR, this dude is an absolute freak of nature. He's a world-class kickboxer, and he really displayed that against Israel Adesanya. He loves to fight with these looping, advancing overhands that casuals may look at and say he fights with a goofy or inefficient style, but he defends his head really well when going for these strikes, and it makes it really hard to prepare for and really hard to counter. It's something you either just need to effectively block or just get cleanly out the way. Beyond just the overhands, pretty much every shot Dricus du Plessis throws is a bomb. Right now you're looking at the jab that dropped Robert Whittaker, one of the boogeymen of the middleweight division. Kyle's movement is going to have to be on point if he's going to fight Dricus, because he's never fought someone with that kind of power before. The blend of Dricus's unique style and power is definitely a tough puzzle for the middleweight division to solve. But if there's a way to solve it, I think a fighting nerd could figure that out. One might make the argument that after Dricus du Plessis' recent performance against Israel Adesanya, he would dismantle a guy like Caio Borralho, who also fights very light on the feet and with a movement-heavy approach. And what I would say to that is Caio Borralho likes to move forward and pressure a lot more than Izzy does, who likes to fight on the back foot. And this would give some resistance to a guy like Dricus du Plessis, who also likes to move forward with an output-heavy style. Caio's also a lot younger than Izzy is, and I think that his speed and his willingness to engage in, on the surface, risky striking exchanges would be a big difference maker in this fight. What really makes me believe in this guy is just how much grit and resilience he showed in the 5-round fight against Jared Cannonier. I think if the fighting nerds are able to lab it out and come up with a way that Caio Borralho can punish Dricus du Plessis' advancing overhands, sort of slow him down a bit, he has the tools to win this fight through a dominant decision or maybe even a highlight reel finish. And with that, that's all I have for you guys today. Make sure you tune into the Natural's next fight, as I believe we have a special prospect on our hands. And if you have any takes pertaining to his shot at the belt, I'd love to read them in the comments below. I'm Don with Palace Sports, and as always, thank you so much for watching.